One of the best and worst things about reselling is that you can use a different method for every single process. And I have tried pretty much every method that there is for listing or really any process because when I started as a solopreneur and did this as a side hustle for a couple of years, I was more focused on getting it done comfortably. Now that I've skilled up to a more full-time business, I'm way more focused on efficiency and getting it done the fastest way possible to get more units accomplished. Today, I want to share with you the most efficient method and fastest method that I have found for getting items listed consistently and quickly from the time I get them at the thrift store to the time that they get shipped out. You may have seen a glimpse of this in an older video that I titled How We Keep 5,000 Items Organized, the 6 systems that we use in our reselling business. There have been many updates since then to some of those systems that we use in our listing process. My new process was built with the following foundations in mind. Number 1, it's not how fast you move, it's about your systems. I am not trying to move as quickly as possible and sweat it out to get things done. It's just not something that I want to do. I would rather have an efficient system that I can get things done comfortably, consistently, and still work pretty quickly, but without breaking too much of a sweat. And number 2, the Ohio rule, which I mentioned in a recent video, which you guys seem to like, but I use it in my everyday business and in my own personal life, which is only handle it once, or at least as many times as you possibly can within your own system. My process for listing items actually starts at the thrift store. And no matter what your process currently is or what you plan on it being, everything really starts with sourcing. Because what happens while you are sourcing not only affects your sales, but it also flows into every single area of your business, including processes. But I digress. While I'm out sourcing, whether it's a regular thrift store, garage sale, anywhere that I go to get items to list, I record every single thing that goes into my cart using my sourcing spreadsheet. The sourcing spreadsheet is essentially a document that I created that I can use on the go to record everything that I'm getting. I use Google Docs, which is essentially a free version of Excel. Any of you can create a Google account and use Google Docs. It has PowerPoint, it has Word, it has Excel, all the things, but their free version of it is called Google Sheets. Now, one of the most important things that I record on this sheet is my intended listing price. It's pretty much the whole reason I made the sourcing spreadsheet, which I'll discuss with you here in just a moment. It's really important that if you are going to do this method, that you do get an accurate price, not kind of what you think you're going to list it for, but exactly what you want to list the item for, because that is what's going to end up being in your listing, whatever you put on this spreadsheet. Here's a couple tips that I have for you in order to make sure that you are getting accurate comps. These are what I use in my own business. 1, I always make sure that I am getting clean data, which means when I have results for things that I'm searching for, I want those results to only contain either the exact item, which is not most of the time, but if not the exact item, then items that are very similar to the item I have at hand. And if I'm not seeing very similar items in my search, then I know I'm not getting clean data. I also make sure to consider sell-through rate when I am pricing. So if something has a lower sell-through rate than what I'm used to for my sourcing constitution, then I'm going to price lower in order to stay competitive. And the last thing I do is I make sure to check comps on the platform that I actually intend on selling the item on. Now, you guys know I start most of my listings on eBay, and so that's where I do most of my comps. But there are times where I have an item and I know it's only going to sell on Poshmark. It's not really an eBay item, and comps look better on Poshmark. And then there are also times where I'm not getting clean data on eBay, or maybe there's not enough data on eBay, but there is enough data on Poshmark, which is a platform that I list all of my items on. And so sometimes I'll do pricing on Poshmark if I have a lack of data. So in either of those two cases, we all know that it's very difficult to search comps on Poshmark because they do not provide the data up front when you're searching available versus sold. It's just not spitting out the data the same way that eBay does, which is why I love using and partnering with Poshwatch, which is an amazing tool that you can use to easily search comps on whatever it is that you're intending to sell on Poshmark. Not only that, but they have several different tools as part of both their app and their website that I use on the regular for my total business. Now, I'm mostly using their app because I like using it while I'm on the go to do these comps. You can use their app. They've got it for Apple and Android. You can also just pull it up on your Chrome browser on your phone, and you can also use their website, which is another great resource. I use all of the tools across all of those different ways. They have a ton of things such as being able to share your Poshmark closet and set that schedule, sending out offers automatically and other things like that. But the core one I want to focus on with you today, in case you want to use this tool to make your life easier and to get accurate and clean data, is using their research tool. This is their website, which again, you can access this on the mobile app as well, but their product research tool is one of my favorites because they spit out the data that Poshmark does not give you. And so let's say I have this Lululemon Warp light jacket, or I want to type my own stuff in. Poshwatch will spit out the exact sell-through rate within 30 days and also within the last 90 days for me. I can also use their filters to filter by category, size, even color, and department. And so these filters are going to help you to better get that clean data and drill down to what you really need to see. They give you all kinds of information such as your average time to sell and the average sale price. And if you scroll down, they're actually showing you sold and available that you can click through. Something else that would be helpful while you're on the go is their fee calculator. So if you're trying to determine based on Poshmark's fees, let's say that's your main platform, or you know the item's probably going to sell on Poshmark, you can use their fee calculator to figure out based on your cost of goods and also your sale price what you could end up making on Poshmark. And so in this example, I can see that my net profit, if I sold it for that much, would be $32.01. Like I said, they have so many features you can use. It's a great all-in-one tool for all things Poshmark. But the last one I wanted to show you in terms of actually pricing, sourcing, and getting to the point of listing, which we are going to dive into here in just a second, is their top brands charts. This can be a great tool if you want to study what to actually source beforehand and have an idea of how much you're going to list it for before actually looking it up. So I can choose to not show luxury brands and get an idea as to what the top brands are on Poshmark with a breakdown of each. I can also click into the brand itself and get more of an overview of how well that brand is performing on the Poshmark platform. For instance, Quince, great brand. I've showed it in many of my what sold videos. It's number 15 on Poshmark when you exclude luxury brands, and the time to sell majority of the time is less than 24 hours. It is a hot ticket item. And so the top brands chart is a great way to lead you to the right items. I want to say a big thank you once again to Poshwatch for providing this awesome tool, but also partnering with me on another video. If you guys are interested in getting this tool and making your process easier for searching items on Poshmark and figuring out an accurate price with clean data, I will have a link in my description. You can use code Cayley in all caps for 30% off of your first month. And if you're interested in just trying it, you can still use my link down below and try it out for free. Now back into the video. And you can use the Google Docs app to access all of your documents on the go, which is what I use to create these sourcing spreadsheets. This idea came to me a couple of years ago because I was looking over every single process of my business. This is something that I do on an annual basis. I go to a whiteboard or piece of paper or something and I type out every single little step I do for every single little process. And I ask myself, for this year, what can I cross off? What am I doing more than one time that I don't need to be doing? And the particular year that I decided to use a sourcing spreadsheet was the year that I realized I was comping items at the thrift store, because how do you know what you should be picking up if you're not comping it? So I was already looking up what the sell-through rate of the item was. I was already determining and formulating a price in my head and choosing to pick it up with the current cost of goods that the thrift store was charging. But then I would get home to list it and I would forget all of that comping information. And so I was recomping the item again, plus having to remember what the cost of good of that individual item was. So I realized I was doing the comping process twice, which is where the sourcing spreadsheet came in. On the sourcing spreadsheet, I record many different things such as my cost of goods for the item. This is good for, especially if you have like a 50% off sale, you can record it right then and there when it's fresh in your mind and you know exactly what you're paying. I also put a small description, like a start of a title in there, nothing too fancy, but anything that is going to indicate what the item actually is. On the same row, I'll have what I intend to price the item for, plus any notes such as flaws or anything that I want to remember. And this really helps me to get it onto something and record it while the information is all fresh so that I don't have to do it again later. When I get back from the thrift store, I dump everything into a tote or multiple totes, and then I take our reusable signs and I write down the date associated with when I sourced it, which is the same date that I label for the tab of that particular spreadsheet that I created. We are typically sourced a couple days to sometimes a couple of weeks ahead, depending on how good sourcing is. And so I never usually end up listing things as soon as they come in. But if you're in that situation, then you don't really need to dump it into a tote and assign it because you'll be doing it the same day. When it's time to actually list the item, I'll grab the bucket of items that I'm going to list and I'll bring it back to my photo station. Before I start photographing, I take that assigned sheet that tells me the date associated with the spreadsheet. I pull that spreadsheet up that already has most of the info that I need for a listing, and I'll use that spreadsheet to upload it into eBay, which is my main platform, and then upload and create a bunch of drafts using the upload spreadsheet method. That is a more complicated method for resellers. If you want to know exactly how to do that method, I do have a video and it'll walk you through the process. If you're not somebody that wants to use the upload method, I still think that the sourcing spreadsheet can be great because you can copy and paste it into creating drafts, or you can just have the information readily available so that you don't have to double comp. But I personally take the spreadsheet that I've already created, I upload it into creating drafts, and I've essentially covered half of what I need for the listing as it is. Also, when I'm creating those drafts, I will bulk edit everything that I know is going to be on every single listing, such as my business policies or some of my frequently used dimensions for shipping, the description, all of it. Everything that could possibly done that is the same in every single listing, I go ahead and get in those initial drafts before I ever start photographing. This is so that by the time I go to actually upload the photos and complete the draft, all that really needs to happen besides uploading the photos is to complete my title and then finish any drop downs that don't automatically get populated from the title and then fill out any flaws. These drafts will be waiting for me by the time I'm done photographing and ready to upload those photos. Next step in my process is photos. My goal with photos is to get everything that I possibly would ever need to complete the listing within my photos. By the time I finish photographing, I want to be able to put that item away into my inventory system and not have to pull it out again. Ohio rule. So I get everything in my photos that I personally use for listings. Personally, I do measurements. I weigh the item. I take a picture of the weights. I take a picture of any flaws, any material tags that I might need, any details up close that I might need to show the buyer. And I also photograph the SKU, so I know exactly what to put in my SKU box for inventory. In order to start photographing, I hang everything up in bulk, and as I'm hanging it, I'm looking the item over. I'm cutting off any Goodwill tabs or tags, anything that might be on it that needs to come off. I'm steaming it. If it needs steamed, I am lint rolling. I'm doing everything to get it ready to be prepared to photograph. And then I take my photos, again, including every single thing that I need. And I do this for each item. So I do an item, I photograph everything that that item needs so that the photos stay in a set. Like I said, as I'm photographing, my intention is to not have to get the item out again. So I'm folding that item, I'm putting it in a plastic bag and putting that SKU on to then be able to take a picture of that SKU to include in my photo set. These items get put into a box after I finish photographing them in order per my inventory system. If you want to know more about my inventory system, I do have a video on that as well. Once all of my photos are done, I then take those boxes that now contain all of my freshly photographed new items, and I put those boxes away on the shelf in my inventory to not be touched again until it's time to ship. You'll notice that I don't really use any lights I used to have a very complicated process where I would use additional lighting, I would do background removal, I would crop the photo, I'd manipulate it, but I just got to a point where I needed to cut as much out of my process as possible in order to be efficient, and also just the mental aspect of having to do all of those things. Eliminating all of that for me has been a game changer. And so I figured out a way to take photos, and those are the photos that get uploaded raw into the listing and don't get manipulated at all. So at this point, I need to upload my photos, and I know it's going to be smooth sailing because I have done everything outside of actually completing the listing. And so I get to spend the second part of my day sitting down or standing up at one of our standing desks and actually just filling out the rest of the details. No more photos to take, no more measurements to take, no more having to sort it out later and put it into inventory, nothing. It is done. By the time I sit down to upload photos, I don't have anything else to do except complete the rest of that draft, which is already 75% done for me in the first place. I usually like to finish up the day by drinking coffee, listening to music, etc. as I do it, but I want to remain focused while also it being somewhat enjoyable. I start by plugging my phone directly into my computer and then transferring all of my photos from an album on my phone over to a folder on my actual computer. I then reference this folder on my computer and those photos that are there, which by the way, are in order because I took them in sets. So everything I need for that one item is in a set of photos in order. I reference the photos in that folder to start opening up my eBay drafts in the order that the photos are. So here's an example of what my screen would look like. I don't have any draft photos right now because we complete all drafts the same day that we start them. But this would be half of my screen being the actual album with all of the photos, and then the other half would be my drafts page. And then I would just start by opening up all the drafts that I would need and then dragging those photos over into each of the drafts. And I do this by opening up every single draft that I need into a new tab. I generally do this in sets of 15 to 20 just so I don't have a million tabs open that are bogging down my computer. I'll then go into each of the tabs that are open and I'll start dragging in bulk those photo sets into their appropriate drafted listings. And I move pretty quickly through each tab. I get all of the photos uploaded first and move through each tab to do so. Then I'll go back to the first tab where the photos should be finished uploading by now, and I'll start completing the listing. After I finish each listing, I save the draft and I move on to the next tab. By the end of it, I'm going to have all 15 or 20 tabs open and all of those drafts are going to be saved. I'll then close out of all of those tabs and refresh my draft page. Then I grab that set of 15 to 20 or however many I want to schedule and schedule them for their appropriate days. I like being ahead, so I schedule my listings out. But the goal is that I want to flush them out of my draft page so that my drafts are narrowed down and it's not clogging up things that are done and things that aren't done. You might choose to just set them live. What makes both the upload and the completing the draft process so easy is that since the photos are in order and I open up the tabs in order, it's a pretty easy process to get the photos in and then start completing those listings. I make sure to do everything right the first time. So if there's any drop down that needs filled out or could be filled out, I go ahead and complete it. I complete that listing to the best of its ability. I do not second guess whether there are certain drop downs that are appropriate, whether they aren't. If they have a correct answer, I fill it out as much as I possibly can. I include all of my best keywords in my title and then any other ones I'm putting in my description. I leave nothing to chance. I want to know that when that listing goes live, I have done everything I possibly could to get that item to sell. And remember, my pricing information and all of that information has already come over from when I uploaded them. So there's no need for me to double comp. Once my first set is completed, then it is on to the next set. And I basically repeat the process by going to my folder with all of my photos. I delete any of the ones in bulk that I've already completed, and I move on to that next set of 15 to 20 until they're all completed. By the end of this process, all photos will be deleted out of that folder and all drafts will have been completed and moved out of the draft page of my eBay listings. I'm a big believer in getting the listings done the same day that you photograph them. The items are going to be fresh in your mind, and so you're going to remember the features, the way it felt, what that item was probably made of, and it's going to make you list a lot faster because you'll just have had the item out. Once you start to break up that process and you do this on some days and you do this on other days, you lose so much time. Plus, you risk the chance of telling yourself that you'll get it done later and you don't actually do it. Once my entire listing sets are completed, that's it until shipping. I don't have to do anything else. Everything is fleshed out. Everything is deleted. That is completed. Everything is already put into inventory. So once I'm done typing away on the computer, all those listings are scheduled and moved. I don't have anything else to do. So from this point, it just sits in inventory until it goes to ship. I personally ship everything in bulk, which is a whole nother video and a whole nother process, but that's another way that I save time and be more efficient. Yeah, that's my personal listing process. Like I said, I have tried, I mean, if you have done it, I have done it. I have done doing it on mobile versus desktop. I have done uploading it through different ways. I have done flat lays. I've done inverted flat lays. I've done different light sources. I've done no measurements. I've done measurements, obviously. I have done every single method that you can possibly think of, and this is the one that works best for me. And it is the one that I have found to be the most efficient, especially when you are listing multiple items every single day. Now that I've got this process down, first of all, it was not as efficient in the beginning. It took me some time to get good at it. But once I stuck with it, a few weeks in, I was able to start getting listings done in about 5 to 6 minutes myself, which is the fastest that I'm able to do it. Remember, we include lots of things like details of the listing, measurements, and some things that other sellers don't. So for me, 5 to 6 minutes per listing, the total process, photographing and completing the listing is pretty good. But whenever I have my listers do listings, I give them 8 minutes per listing as a buffer zone because they're not as experienced as me. And even a new member of my team within about a month or so can achieve it within 8 minutes. So if you're not currently achieving 8 minutes or less per item, both photographing, preparing, and getting that item listed, then this might be a process that you want to look into. And I understand that this process will not be for everyone. Sometimes we just work better with different workflows. But this was a highly requested video, and I hope you enjoyed learning about my own personal process and my journey and how I got here. Use some or all of the process. It's up to you. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you in the next one. Bye.